Let's go. We're back. It's 2025. We begin the new year with a new episode. We want to start the year off well. We want to have a good start and be intense yet calm. Try and find the balance and keep it up for the whole year. We want to have a successful year of hard work. So this is like a mini preparation for the year, which is going to be consisting of very, very hard work. If you're not looking forward to working hard in 2025, then you can go, because this is what I'm going to be talking about. Anyway, let's get into it. Hopefully, in the 19 days since my last podcast, I haven't forgotten how to speak. Anyway, episode 22, I think. I'm Coach Prez. I'm a football coach and a self-proclaimed blue belt philosopher. I think this is what I used to say. So I've got a question. Usually we talk about sport, football, and then everything else, philosophy and all that stuff. But today we're skipping the sport bit. Okay, the sport is going to come later in the year. I've got a question which is a very important one. We cannot overlook it. It's by my boy Sharon, one of my players used to play for me. I appreciate the questions. Anyway, the question is a very important question. How, if I want to get into philosophy, how do I start? Okay, what books to read first? Because this is very difficult. I'll tell you why. When before I answer, just like a very, very short story. In Bulgaria, obviously where I went to school, we had the subject in school. It was compulsory: philosophy, logic, psychology. You had these subjects over the years, and the way it was presented, it was so poor. Yet everyone that actually, all you remembered from it, was some bullshit, that's some rubbish, pointless. What's the point of these people? They just talked, blah, 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 blah. It just had such a negative impression because of the way it was presented. That was horrible. It puts you off from it for a very long time. The only people that kind of go into philosophy or show even a slight interest, I consider they're considered like weird or whatever, which is not a good thing. My belief is that everyone should be studying philosophy. Literally every single person, everyone's life would be better if you actually study a little bit of philosophy. But then we still have this stigma, I would say. He reads all this crazy stuff, which, fair enough if that's what you think. That's your opinion. But anyway, I've talked about for over 20 episodes the importance, why it is important, why it's very important to be able to think, and so on and so forth. And that is so important to work on your thinking, to keep improving the way you think. That's a thing. That is a thing that should be improved and that should be focused on, yet it never is. It's never the primary goal. However, we have the question. That's a good question. How do we start? As we've discussed, it is very important what impression you get of it and the way you start, because it's such a complex topic, such a complex matter, that whole, not area, but the whole subject is massive. you've got information, and you've got compiled knowledge of this, literally the smartest people of all time. You have all their knowledge compiled, and this is gone into kind of one subject, and everyone's got a point of view. It's not like science where you can prove this definitively and then this and then this. In philosophy, it's more so like schools of thought. These guys see things one way, these guys see things the other way, obviously another way, and these guys completely different way, third way. Okay, he thinks this about this, he thinks this about that. In science, there is not so much, I would say, less variety of there is less interpretation there, less room for interpretation. So it's more, obviously you've got numerous theories in science as well, but it's less, the ones that are accepted are very few, like widely accepted, so yeah. Anyway, I don't want to get off topic again. How do you get started? You want to start simple. Okay, you want to start with the basics so you don't get confused, because the way it works is, it's like starting to study everything else. You want to start from the basics and then build from there, because if you start at the top, you're trying to read something, it's like trying to do maths and you're starting with some ultra complex equations and you're seeing all these symbols and what is X, what is Y, Z, and all these letters, and I'm like, what? I don't even know that. I can't even count yet. What am I seeing? You know what I mean? So in philosophy, it's the same thing. You cannot go and read someone like Martin Heidegger. I can see him there. I haven't read him yet. Okay, he's still on my hit list. Hit list sounds cooler than a reading list, so hit list. It's too complex. Being in time, Martin Heidegger, that's complex. You cannot just open this book and read it like it's nothing, like you're reading Hansel and Gretel or whatever. You need to build yourself up to get there. So to start with the basics, that means you're gonna go back in time. So you start with the ancient Greeks. Okay? Who is the first one? Okay, what you need to understand is that Plato is like the oldest, what should I call him? Let's say like the godfather of philosophy almost. Yeah, the godfather. Let's call him the godfather. Why? Well, Plato lived around 200 years before BC. Okay? So before Jesus Christ. Imagine what that means for the New Testament and everything, and all of Jesus' teachings. What does it mean when the ancient Greeks precede him? It means a lot of his teachings, where do they come from? He didn't just come and make all this stuff up. He took it from the past, from all the great thinkers before him. There is a straight line. If you actually go and study philosophy, you'll see it. Anyway, you start with Plato. He's the oldest, obviously famous Greek philosopher that actually wrote things. Yeah. Obviously before Plato, you had this teacher, Socrates. Socrates, though, he didn't write anything. All we know about Socrates is from Plato's writings. Okay? In Plato's books, I don't know about most, like I've read quite a few. In almost every single one of his books, he's talking about Socrates. So Socrates is like the main character in the book. Socrates was his teacher, but then he puts him in the book and he uses him to, obviously he's very, the experts can talk about this better than me, but he uses him to represent his own point of view, but also he's giving us obviously some sort of account and Socrates' point of view, basically. So it's difficult to separate one from the other. Obviously, Plato has got his own books that he's giving you his own, he's not talking about Socrates, but then he's got books that he is talking about Socrates, and the whole book is kind of narrated from Socrates' point of view, or whatever. And Socrates is the main character. So you start with Plato, the oldest. So this is what you need to know. This is like the big three of Greece: Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. In that that way, boom, boom, boom. What? I went to Bulgaria for 10 days and I forgot how to speak English. Not good. Socrates, the teacher of Plato, Plato, the teacher of Aristotle. You know who Aristotle was the teacher of? Alexander the Great. So now you can see how philosophy has impacted history. Everyone knows Alexander the Great. Aristotle was his teacher. Okay, he was in there. He was giving him advice, teaching him about logic, about this, about that. Imagine how much respect people had for these guys, how smart they were. Anyway, so the first 4 books, which are more or less, because they're very tiny, they're almost like stories. They're written very simply, easy to understand. Obviously, you need to take your time a little bit, but the first 4, it's basically, they're all Plato's. I think they're compiled in one book, because I think this is the way I read them. I think it's called The Last Days of Socrates by Plato. So this is like a compilation of all 4 of these. So what the separate little books are called, they are Euthyphro, then the Apology, Crito, and Phaedo. So Euthyphro, what that is about is, I think Socrates, he was sentenced to death and killed because he was poisoning the youth. Okay, Andrew Tate probably thinks he's Socrates nowadays. He thinks, he definitely thinks he's Socrates. Anyway, because Socrates was going around, around Athens, and he was questioning all these people that thought they were smart or rich or whatever. And he was showing them that they're not very smart just by questioning them. Just by showing them, pointing out contradicting beliefs that they hold. Very simple, very simple. He wasn't really going around trying to teach them anything. He was just having a conversation, and just the way he talks to people, the way he asks questions. It's all about this is almost like the main thing that you learn and remember from Socrates. Ask questions. Okay, he's very unassuming. Socrates. He's very polite, humble. Just goes around, asks questions. Yeah, but why? Yeah, they all get pissed off. They get worked up, and then you see, okay. Then you start to see, this guy. Okay, so this is kind of how the philosopher moves. Okay, yeah, Socrates. So anyway, he's sentenced to death, and Euthyphro, I think, obviously towards the end, he meets Euthyphro. This is another guy. I think this guy is like a judge or whatever he was. And they start having a conversation because Euthyphro has to sentence someone to probably like his dad to prisoner. It was something like this. And then they start talking about piety, piety. This word that is kind of a little bit difficult to, it's like respect and piety. What is piety exactly? Respect towards your parents, respect and loyalty for your parents, probably something along the lines. Yeah. So they're talking about this, blah blah blah, and they go into this debate about what is good, what is not, what is pious, what is not pious, and then they just go into a conversation about why something is good, more or less. Is something good because it's loved by the gods, or is it loved by the gods because it's good? So then this is that massive argument. So you start to kind of, it's like a sneak peek into how complex everything can be. And imagine this, all this is happening 2,300 years ago. 2,300 years ago. That's what's shocking. How smart these guys were such a long time ago. Can you imagine? They're having this conversation. So you can start this like first steps. Back then there was like there was no science. Religion wasn't really what it is today. So back then, Jesus still wasn't a thing. Okay. Islam, yeah, Islam. So Muslims, that religion wasn't really around. I don't want to make like a brutal mistake. We're talking about the way we know things today. Okay, as far as I'm concerned, Islam has been around for what? How many years? I think it's what, 7th century or it was 14th century. One of the two, anyway. Getting it mixed up a little bit in my head. I think it's 14th century. Let me check actually before I keep talking. Anyway, so back then, so many things were different. People still believed in like multiple gods and all this, like Zeus and Poseidon and all these guys. Islam. What was I checking? All right, let's just check quickly. Okay, 7th century. I got it right. I'm smart. Smart. Yeah, 14th century was a bit of a. The way I remembered it is because now is the 21st century, so I was like, it's either been around for 14 centuries, or for 7. Anyway, I got it right, didn't I? So, back then, 7th century, the Quran and everything. The New Testament, obviously, begins with the calendar that we've got. Socrates, 3 centuries BC, basically. So they're talking about this. After that, we had, so this is Euthyphro. Next one, the Apology, is basically Socrates' defense in court. Okay, so he's in front of the jury, he's trying to defend himself, and he's not really defending himself, he's just telling them, hey, listen, if you think that this is bad, then okay. It just gives his side of things. It's interesting, just read it. I don't want to spoil it too much. I don't want to come here and explain the whole book, the whole thing. But yeah, Socrates in front of the jury, he defends himself best way he can. just shows them, but then they're all corrupt. Half of them are corrupt, and he knows he's not gonna turn them around, pretty much. But it just says, well, if you believe that this is wrong, I'm simply asking questions. Yeah. So all I know is that I don't really know much. Or is in his own words, all I know is that I know nothing. So I've been going around and asking people that are supposedly wise, that supposedly know things. I've been going around and trying to learn from them. And then it turned out that they're not smart, the way he asks questions. That's where you get the Socratic method from. Okay, that's a thing, the Socratic method. Check this out. So yeah, Socrates, after that, this is the second text, so second book. Third book, Crito. What was Crito about? Crito was... what was Crito about? Is that they were asking him to leave, to run away, to escape? Why die? Crito. Let's see. One sec. Come on, mate. Yeah, Crito. This is one of Socrates' students. He's trying to persuade him to escape. Yeah, Socrates, he says no. He says, I'm not going anywhere. And then he starts talking about what is it to be a good person, to be a good citizen. And then you actually start to see a little bit more of Socrates' character. So that's good. That's a really good text. I really like Crito. And then Phaedo, I think that's like his final speech, I'm pretty sure. Oh yeah, and in Phaedo, he's talking about the soul. Okay, what is the soul? That he believes the soul is immortal. So you have in these texts, you see different aspects, different areas of philosophy. So here he's talking about the soul. This is like metaphysics. All this, this. This is not really. Yeah, this is more metaphysical. In the one before, what is he talking about? He's talking about more or less about morality, more or less. Okay, what is good, what is bad, all this. The one before that, in the first one, Euthyphro, he's talking a little bit. It's about like logic, if you call that, if you want to put it that way. Obviously, this is just my observation. I just realized that on the spot just now. So he's giving you. It's like you get your first taste of all these different things, all these different aspects of philosophy, because philosophy covers a lot. You know what a good explanation for philosophy is? So philosophy is pretty much the middle. So the middle, the balance, and the bridge between science and religion. So you have one end here, religion. The other end is here, science. In the middle is philosophy. Okay, or you could call it philosophy is the parent and it had two children. A lot of people are not gonna agree with this because a lot of people, they're very religious and they've got like an emotional attachment or whatever to religion, and they're gonna say, well, religion was around before philosophy. Okay, You can make your argument, that's fine. But philosophy, you could say philosophy is the parent, and philosophy had two children that are a bit kind of like opposites. One is religion and one is science. Because if you think about it, philosophy means love of wisdom. What religion does, pretty much, religion is teaching you stuff, okay? Everything that's got anything to do with you teaching, to teaching you things, and you learning new things, and becoming better as a person and whatever. Everything that's got anything to do with thinking, this is philosophy. So, logically, you could say religion comes after philosophy. At least we're not going too deep at the moment. We're just kind of just talking, okay? Don't judge me too harshly on what I said. I just want to make sure, because I know that I'm not extremely precise with my words at the moment. Why? Just to make some excuses for myself at the moment for a second. I've just come back from Bulgaria. The last time I had alcohol was 4 days ago, so I'm still that's not good for your thinking. I'm still a bit slow. It's 12 o'clock at night. That's enough excuses for now. The books that I'm talking about, it's not like I'm preparing before I start. I'm going off of recollection on the spot from when did I read these for? I think it was in the summer, so about 6 months ago. So I'm kind of putting things together as I go. All right, so por favor, cut me some slack today. In 2 weeks' time, so from episode 24 on, you can be very judgmental, okay? Hold on to everything I say. If I make a mistake, I've made a mistake. But I probably won't, because I'll be sharp then. My brain would be, all systems would be go by then. Now I'm still getting back into it, okay? So anyway, back then, you see, Socrates, he was talking about everything. Then you get Plato. He had different ideas as well. He was talking about this, about that. Plato, the Republic, is basically saying he's building the perfect country, the perfect state in his mind. Imagine Plato, how clever was Plato? The intellect. The Republic is not a bad one. It's fine. It's good. It's not one of my favorite, but it's good. It's just impressive to read it and to be like, yeah, this guy wrote this in a time when most people they couldn't read, they couldn't write. They were illiterate. They were like monkeys almost. Not monkeys, but very primitive, most illiterate. And he wrote this. So Aristotle, he had amazing. Aristotle, I remember I read one of his books 3 years ago now. Nicomachean Ethics, I think. I'm pretty sure that's the name. That's a brilliant book. When people talk about balance, it is very important for you to be balanced. Balance is good for you. That's like the most cliched thing that everyone says. You need to find the balance. You need to find balance. You need to find balance in everything. Who actually kind of came up with this? The first person to put it into writing, more or less, and to logically express that idea. You know who that was? That was Aristotle in this book. That book was brilliant. And he was talking about You know, when a person, just giving you an example, I'm not saying he said this exactly. If someone talks, yeah, that's good. If a person talks too little, that's not good. But if he talks too much, that's not good as well. So you need to talk just the right amount, if that makes sense. So he was talking about this, but about all the main principles that humans have mostly. So this was a brilliant book, Aristotle. Aristotle, he was so curious and he was so intelligent. He was like, he was basically a walking encyclopedia. Because of him, he's like almost like the godfather of science. He started collecting data, collecting information about so many different things. Just knowledge, piling up knowledge, information, data. Then people after him can use. They start building up on that. He thought he was like the first physicist, not the first, like literally, but like more or less like the first known physicist almost, Aristotle. Oh, he thought that um, things have essence. Why don't birds fall? Because their essence, or whatever he said, is to fly, to levitate. Why does the rock sit on the ground like that? Because the essence of the rock is to sit still, or whatever. He thought that everything revolved around the earth, because that's what he saw. Okay, so he made an observation. Boom, boom, boom. So this is now physics, basically, pretty much. And then after him, the guy after him, everyone else that came, was like, okay, this is what Aristotle thinks. Why does he think that? And then everyone else starts to build up on top of this knowledge. Some things get proven right again and again and again. Some other things, you get someone else and he says, no, he's not right. And then that guy starts thinking about how to prove Aristotle wrong. So this is how science works, okay? This is how we got to here, where you can go to space and everything else. That's how. But you see these guys, Aristotle, one of the greatest philosophers and one of the first scientists in the modern meaning of the word. Can you imagine? Just in, that was like the beginning. It's just I don't know. I just like it's almost like origin story of these subjects, and when you trace everything back to where it started from, kind of, and you go back to these few very great minds that started, and you're like, wow. So this is three of the greatest philosophers of all time. You start with them and then you start building up. Then you start building up. Okay? And then, yeah, you move from there. Try different things. I can tell you my first book that I read, that I started reading, I didn't finish it. It was Friedrich Nietzsche, a German philosopher. But I started reading his book because he was, back then I was like 17 or whatever. I went through, like, I was very like anti-religious. I was like the biggest, if you asked me back then, I would have said I'm the biggest atheist of all time. So I saw him and he was talking more or less along the lines of what I was saying. I was like, oh, this guy is so cool. So I tried reading him and he had some great things, especially Thus Spoke Zarathustra. That's not his best work, but back then, that's the one I knew. So it was that was a big deal to me. I read about 60 pages and I read one of the most powerful lines that I've ever read still. It was, I thought I know it in Bulgarian because I read it in Bulgarian. Let me see if I can find it in English. Mm, burden asks. I can't find it. It was basically Nietzsche was saying, or his character was saying, what is the hardest burden, the heaviest burden? Asks my unbreakable will or spirit, so I can carry it and enjoy my strength. So also I can take it on and enjoy my strength. Something along the lines. That was the oh, I need to find it. I need to find that quote in English. That was probably one of the my spirit asks or my will, whatever you, yeah, my unbreakable spirit uh, asks what is the heaviest burden, so I can take it on, so I can carry it and then just enjoy my strength. So uh, I wish I would pay so much money just to be able to go back and read these things again for the first time. You know, when you're just like everything is normal kind of, and then you read something or you see something and then you're like, and then it's like what you're like you're shocked. That's what philosophy gives you. I've never had anything like this from anything else. It's mostly been from philosophy. You read it and then you're like, you can never think the same way that you thought up until now ever again. It's just you're changed now. It sounds ridiculous because it's very difficult for you to change. Change doesn't happen like this. But some books, like you finish them and you've just finished reading and you're like, wow, that book was brilliant. I still remember them. But because now I've progressed so much, if I go, when I go back, because I've done that with a lot of the books that I thought were like brilliant when I read them. When I go back and read them, I'm like, yeah, that's fine. But because now I've progressed so much, but back then when I was at this like very, very beginner level, everything I read, I was like, oh my God, not everything. For almost every book, I was saying, yeah, that was a really good book. Some books like, oh my God, that book, wow, one of the greatest books of all time. Now, if I go back and read them, I'm like, yeah, that's good, that's good. Yeah. Much more difficult to impress. But because I'm much further down the line in my philosophical journey or whatever. Jesus Christ, 39-minute answer, yeah? I think this is my longest answer to a question ever. Some kind of drifting off topic all the time. So start with the ancient Greeks to summarize. Plato, Aristotle, then move from there. Move from there. You know, everyone, oh yeah, all the Stoics, you know, Marcus Aurelius, he's good to read. He's easy as well. He lived not much late, not much, you know, later, not long after, I meant to say. And yeah, Seneca. Seneca is decent. He's a Stoic as well. Uh, I read I think a year or two ago I read a couple of books from Cicero. He's there as well. Zeno. Yeah. Yeah, start with the ancient because they're more simple. And then whenever you find something that you like, then you kind of go in that direction. Because there are very complex things like Immanuel Kant. Stay away from Kant. That's ultra difficult. Arthur Schopenhauer. Ridiculously difficult. Ridiculously difficult. The most difficult book I've ever attempted to read is, just listen to the title, by Arthur Schopenhauer. The title of the book is On the Fourfold Root of the Principle of Sufficient Reason. 4 times I read it. Back to back to back to back. If you ask me what the book is about, I'm still gonna struggle to tell you. Obviously, I read it almost 3 years ago, but it's so ridiculously difficult. And some of these authors, they don't give a fuck, man. These philosophers, they just go boom, straight into the topic. They expect you to have read like 500 books and to know everything there is to know about philosophy leading up to them. And they just, the language they use to write, so difficult and it's so dry. It's not like, it's very easy to like comprehend and whatever. They're using very complex words because these guys are so smart and their brains work so at such like a higher frequency or whatever. Just wait, let me just give you an example. There's Kant. Hopefully I don't. Oh, my books don't fall now. Let's open to a page and. So this is like still introduction. Immanuel Kant, the Critique of Pure Reason. The aim of deduction is to show that, contrary to the empiricists' doctrines, categories must render experience possible without arising from it, and so must exist in the profound nature of the mind prior to experience. Our immediate sensory contact with reality consists merely in the fact that we are affected in diffuse, unrelated and successive ways in sensibility, and it amounts to no experience except for an indeterminate and chaotic one. All that our intuitions contain is what Kant calls a manifold, that is, an undeterminate multiplicity and sequence of sensory contents. To create a coherent experience out of this chaotic manifold contained in our intuitions, we require, aside from the forms of intuition, space and time, categories with the aid of which we grasp this manifold and receive it into consciousness, a consciousness that we call experience. This is the introduction to the book. That's not the actual book. So this is the introduction, which is supposed to be explaining to you, giving you like a little background into what you're gonna be into what you're gonna be reading. This is not very practical. This is like for the top. This is for people that want to challenge themselves. Oh. Yeah, this is for people that want to challenge themselves. Or you're up here, your IQ is up here, and you want to challenge yourself, and you've done a lot of things in your life, and now you've got a little bit of time, and you want to keep progressing. But if you haven't done anything in your life and you're trying to kind of read Kant, that's not maybe not the best thing, you know. I even I started this book. No, it's not because I'm a big fan of Immanuel Kant, because I wanted to read Arthur Schopenhauer. But then Arthur Schopenhauer, after I finished that book that I told you the title of, when the one that I read back to back to back to back, yeah, that book that I read back to back to back to back is like the introduction to his other two books, The World as Will and Representation, the other one. But then, as soon as I started The World as Will and Representation, Volume 1, he said, okay, to the reader, if you're about to read this book, I'm expecting of you to already have read on the fourfold root of the principle of sufficient reason, and also be acquainted with the works of Kant, and I don't remember who else he said. And you should be very familiar with the critique of pure reason. Okay, I'm not starting this today. Okay, let's go back, start the critique of pure reason, and look at the critique of pure reason. You know what it feels like reading it? It feels like you're chewing sand. Tasty. Exciting. But one day I'll get to it. I'll get to it because I'm gonna have as close to a complete knowledge of philosophy as possible. I can only imagine the type of person I'll be when I'm like 40 or 45. Because at the moment I'm on like 250 books. And I've read so much philosophy already. Imagine when I've read 750 books, what I'm going to be like. Because me, compared to me when I've read 3 books, if I compare this person to me now, we don't even exist in the same dimensions. It's like this other guy lives in 2D, in 2-dimensional world, and I live in 4D almost. Honestly, I'm just being objective. Everything is different. Just the essence of me as a person, it's like it's changed. It's reached so deep within that it's ridiculous. My most basic desires and instincts almost and way of thinking is completely changed. And this didn't happen out of experiences. This happened to me, that happened to me. Because experiences change you. But the way they change you, you're not really in control, almost. But when you read, you kind of make the changes. You have like your hand on the steering wheel a little bit when you read that much. So you can kind of guide your changes. So everything that I've changed, like the things that I've changed literally like from my core, if you want to call it, or to my core, changes that very, the big ones, kind of I've decided what to happen, what to move where, or what to adjust to what level and all this, if that makes sense. Whereas if you just wait for things to happen to you that are going to change you, you don't have that degree of control. You just kind of, you go with whatever happens, all right? So it is what it is. But now we're 50 minutes in. That's enough on the topic. I wanted to talk about starting the year properly. But then we went very deep into this philosophical discussion, which I don't mind. It's probably going to be exactly 3 of us watching this podcast. However, it is what it is. Hopefully, at least myself, I can come back to this podcast maybe 5 years from now when I'm on 500 books or hopefully more. And I listen to myself and hopefully I'm not ashamed. I'm like, yeah, respectable, respectable. Very limited knowledge, but respectable. That I'm hoping that I can say that to myself. My future self can say this to my present self. I hope so. If that's not the case, then either I'm very smart at the moment, or I haven't really done any work. Hopefully, yeah, hopefully I've done the work and I listen to myself and I say, yeah, that's respectable, given the limited knowledge. I hope that's what I say. Yeah. But anyway, I'll continue this in the next podcast. Whoever's, if you've gotten to here, you've gotten to here. You listen, okay? You listen. Did everything I say, is it the absolute truth or a fact or whatever? No. Hopefully I can kind of give you like a introduction, like a friendly introduction into these things. If you're interested in them, you're gonna do something with it. If you're not, then it is what it is. But I just hope, I can't force anyone to read philosophy. This is something that, this is like a personal journey. You do it for yourself. It helps you in life because of the way you think. Because you become it literally feels like you're becoming smarter. Which then again, most people say, this guy's smart, this guy's not, as if it's something natural. It is natural to a certain extent. But when you read philosophy, it feels like you're optimizing. You're optimizing everything that you've got is actually starting to be used. Okay? Otherwise, you can be very smart. Like, you can have a lot of horsepower. Your brain can be very powerful, high IQ, but then you don't use it for no good. You're very emotional. You base everything on emotions, and so what? So what that you have a high IQ if you don't use it? If you don't use your reasoning powers, if you don't use if you don't use that power for nothing, so what that you have? It doesn't matter that you have it if you're very emotional. But then if you use philosophy is going to help you put it into use, proper use. Yeah, so that's good. Because most people, they might have like 120 IQ, but then if you listen to them and whatever, it feels like you're talking to someone that is barely a person or a human, like 85 IQ individual, because they're just they didn't use any of it. But a person that is well read, a person of philosophy and of science, philosophy. I know scientists. Some of them are still dumb and cannot really think. Okay, yeah, they know a couple of the scientific method and everything, blah blah blah. Okay, they know a bit, but still, no philosophy. Still, the most superior thinkers are the philosophers. That's my belief. That's my opinion, and I think I can defend that opinion quite well if it comes down to it. Not that I want to. I don't need to. I know it. Everyone that's honest knows it. But yeah. I hope this has been helpful. That little brief story or podcast about philosophy. Is it going to be entertaining for someone that's already into philosophy? I don't know. Hopefully, I threw in there a couple of personal stories, my experiences. But yeah, other than that, that's good. That's good. You know what? I'm not even gonna get into the way that we're supposed to start the year. I'm just gonna leave that podcast at that. We've just talked about philosophy. My favorite word, probably philosophy. Or favorite, maybe second favorite after discipline and will and Sparta. This is Sparta. Okay, 55 minutes. We're gonna be very modest today with the time. That's enough. That's a good start. I talked about one thing for 55 minutes non-stop. And because so late into the podcast, there is no point starting another topic that I can talk about for another 55 minutes at least. So we're gonna leave it here. Enough for today. I'll be back next week or midweek or something. Maybe I need to catch up. I've done almost 3 weeks with no podcast. I need to catch up. Maybe I'll do one midweek, maybe, potentially. We'll see. But anyway, anyone that got to here, I'm really appreciative. And we're gonna have a strong 2025. Why and how, I'll tell you in the next episode. Because we need to start the year properly. I think this is a good starting point for the year. Okay, we're talking about philosophy. That's something that's very important. This can put you on the right path. This can put you in the right mind, in like headspace to start the new year. Okay, you're starting with something meaningful. You want to work on this and you want to get everything in order, kind of. You want to start something, start a new journey, new year, new journey. Beautiful entrance, beautiful start of the year. So that's it. 57 minutes in. Mr. Coach, Dr. Philosopher Presiam Milchev is finished for today. Boom. I'll be back next week.